result. I'm gonna pass this around so you guys see how it looks like and how we think about how it would look like on the paper. So if you notice on the garment, there are 2 seams, front and the back, and we have 1 bodice and we want to make it into 2 pieces. So what we're going to do is we are going to split it up, essentially. The darts are going to be, the dart placements are going to be in place of where the seams are. Let me just find my assignment sheet. So we don't have to do a whole lot of manipulation. All we have to do is just literally split it up. So I'm gonna start off with the side bodice. I'm going to, let me see, pencils. Trace the front side up to where the closest notch of the dart leg is. So I'm not gonna go all the way over there. I'm just gonna go to the closest one here. Trace everything and make all of my points, oh no. I just moved it a little bit. Mark all of the notches. And the apex point. So once I have that, I'm gonna connect from, on the paper, this is what I'm doing. I'm gonna connect the dart leg to the apex point. So I'm gonna do that to both. Okay, so that's one piece. And then I'm gonna give myself a little space and I'm gonna trace the middle one, the front center. I'm tracing it exactly as it is on the block, and then I'm going to make adjustments after I have it down. So I marked my apex, I marked all my notches, I'm going to connect my lines. Okay, so on the assignment sheet, oh, maybe I should do it in pen so you guys can see it. Marker. Yeah, that way. I'm doing it in marker, but I encourage you guys to do it with pencil so you can erase it. Also, this is kind of off topic, but last week we were talking about darts, and I told you guys when you guys are truing it to bring all of the excess material upwards, which is interesting because that was how I learned it, but I went and looked at all of my garments and they were all facing down. So I think the reason for that is because the materials, the extra materials, if it goes upwards, chances are it's gonna like fold eventually, gradually, which is probably why they made it go downward. So anyways, I don't know which is the correct way, but the way I learned it, all the materials go up, so. Let me see. So all that to say, it doesn't matter which direction, but for this class, the dart materials go up, okay, for the future assignments. Okay, we have the front, we have the side. We're now gonna do our grain line. Important to always put the grain line. I'm gonna transfer to this side too. How am I gonna transfer this green line?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
From your, you said you like, did this yourself. From your experience, how long did it take for you to make the entire assignment?
I had to take breaks, but it took me a whole day. Probably 5 hours in total. But that's also because I knew what I was doing and I didn't need to like reference anything. Like I just went and did it all completely. But if you guys were like looking at the video, you guys were looking at the assignment sheet, you guys are gonna take breaks. It might take you guys longer. But you know, for me, it took only 5 hours. Okay, front and side, we are needing to make it a V-neck. So if you look at the neckline here, it's not a V-neck. And on the assignment, it says to bring it down by 6 inches from the HPB. The HPB is, you don't have to worry about it, but it's basically the highest point of the bodice. So if you look on the side with the two flats, it says bring it down. It doesn't say the HPB or HPS, high point bodice, high point shoulder. It's basically the same thing. But we're gonna do 6 inches from that point, and that point is this point right here, the shoulder right here. So we're gonna find the perpendicular here, find the corner here, because this is not a complete, this is not completely horizontal, so you don't wanna rely on this shoulder seam. So we're gonna find the perpendicular point here, and that is your HPB. You're gonna go down from that point. Does that make sense to everybody? So this is the placement of the high point bodice, and we're gonna mark down 6 inches from that point. So 6 inches down gives me about right here. And this becomes the tip of the V-neck. Now I'm just gonna connect this line to my high point bodice. And if it helps, you guys can mark it HPB, but that's not necessary for this class. This pen is dying on me. This becomes my new neckline. I'm gonna erase this one so that it doesn't confuse me. Just make it darker. Okay. Now we go in with our markings. So we have center front here, and this is our princess bodice. We don't need to mark that. We'll go to mark our side seam. And then just based on how it looks, we can kind of tell that this is the armhole, this is the waist seam, so we don't need to label all of that. And because this is one notch, we know this is the front bodice. Okay, so now we have our seam here, but if you look at this one, this side bodice, it's a little bit pointy, and this is not gonna give us a pleasant look around the bust. So what we're gonna do is we're going to clean it up, make it a little bit smooth. We're gonna measure out 2 inches from the apex up, 2 inches down, and we're going to make a curve in between those points. So taking your French curve, you're just gonna smooth it out. So you're kind of bringing it in just like 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch, and erase that. We no longer need that. But don't forget to transfer your notch, your apex. The apex is one of the important notches that you need to have. Okay, so we have that. We're not done yet. We need to add ease to this bodice. So when I talked about ease previously, it's adding more room, more fabric so that we can have more room, like wiggle room. And a lot of the time it's used on the back. But for the bodice here, because we're kind of bringing it in a little bit, we're losing a little bit of the material. And also because it's rounded, you want to give more shape to, you know, around the curvy part. So we're gonna add ease along this seam here by doing the slash and spread method. And we're gonna add our slash line here. And then I'm gonna cut it out. This, we will need a working pattern. So you will do your working pattern and then you will trace on top of your final pattern. So for the ease that we are adding, generally people would add 3/8 to 1/2 inch. I think 3/8 is plenty for us to add ease here. So I'm gonna cut out. Again, this is just a working pattern. It's not gonna have all the seam allowances. I just need it for the slash and spread method. Okay, so we're gonna slash from the side seam all the way through. Actually, let's keep this end intact. Try your best not to cut all the way through. So cut from the front towards the side seam. And leave just a little bit of room. Now we're gonna retrace onto a new section. And I'm gonna use my handy weights to keep my fabric or my paper from moving. And I'm going to spread this just at the apex by 3/8. So I'm gonna trace all around. And make sure you transfer your notches that you just created. And then I'm gonna open this up 3/8. Um, 3/8 is just a little bit bigger than the 1/4 I was never used to doing like the 3/8 measurement, the 5/8 measurement until I started working, and that was like the only measurements that they use. So it was a learning experience for me. So now that we've opened that, you can either trace it as it is, or I'm just gonna tape it. Yeah. So for this assignment, you do not need to turn in the working pattern if you don't want to. It can just be a part of your final. But we do need to see that you have this slashed and spread. And now I'm not gonna trace the rest because I have the pattern here, but this is opened 3/8. We are gonna mark the new apex point, which is right in the middle of these 2 points, because we increased it, so this new apex point is directly in the middle. Let's see, so we have that, we have this, we opened up this ease. I think we're good with this front pattern. The back pattern is gonna be the same. I'm not gonna show you guys the back pattern, but we don't need to add ease to the back because the back doesn't have the bust pointy parts, the rounded parts. So we don't necessarily need to add ease here, but we will need to smooth this point out. This is the only point that we're gonna need to smooth. But again, we don't need to add ease here. And we're gonna trace one pattern here, get rid of the darts, and then mark all of your notches. Oh, it's just these 2. And these 3 on the armhole. But I'm not gonna show you guys how to do that one, so you guys just copy how you did it here exactly for that. Now all that's left to do is do the seam allowance on the pattern. And seam allowance for the princess seam is gonna be 1/2 inch. The waist seam is gonna be 1 inch because that acts as the hem. And usually hems are between 1 inch and inch and a quarter. And then side seam is gonna be 1/2 inch. Oh, I forgot to true this. Okay. So I am just gonna true it from the seam allowance, not from the stitch seam. So basically it looks like it's just like 1/16 inward. So I'm just gonna measure out the 1/2 inch at the shoulder, underarm, 1/2 inch down here, and connect it. So I don't know if you saw, but my line shifted just a little bit because of that true. Because we had shifted this, we slashed and spread, so it created a little bit of a fold. Does that make sense? It created a little bit of a curve, but we want to straighten it. So this is not the correct seam, this is the correct seam. Armhole is gonna be 1/2 inch. Shoulder is gonna be 1/2 inch. Okay. This one's good. Now we move on to the center. The princess seam is gonna be 1/2. Same as this one, but the difference is that we have the neckline. The neckline is gonna be what? What's the seam allowance for neckline? 1/4 of an inch. Because it is a, usually has a lot of curves, so that's why it's 1/4 of an inch. So we don't need to add seam allowance to the center front because it's gonna be cut on fold. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark.
Will this be 1
Oops,
inch?
you're right. This is 1 inch. I was rushing. This is why you don't rush. Take your time on your patterns. Okay, I'm gonna do my cut and fold. Symbol. And then the neckline is gonna be 1/4 of an inch. Shoulder, 1/2 inch. And then you just cut it out and you're ready to trace it on fabric. Don't forget to do all of your correct labeling. The pattern piece is gonna go from the center, this is the front. Center front will be 1, side will be 2, and then it goes to the back will be 3, center back would be 4. Okay, now this is only the outside fabric, the self fabric. We don't have anything for the facing. So again, for this assignment, we're gonna do the facing and the princess seam, okay? So the princess seam, sorry, not princess seam. The facing is the exact shape as the neckline. And we wanna use this pattern to create our facing. Oops.
For the back part, which part do we have to smoothen out again?
It'll be the pointiest part, which is this part, the back side. And approximately just, I mean, like for the back, it might be less, but maybe 1/4 of an inch to 3/8. The front, I shifted it over about 3/4. So the back might be a little bit less because it's not that pointy. Make sure you have all the proper markings, the labels. And mark which pattern ID it is so that we know. This is one. I'm gonna move this aside. Okay, let's focus on the facing. I'm gonna cut out my piece because I'm just gonna trace it. I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm not gonna redo everything using, starting from the beginning. I'm just gonna use this piece as my block to trace my facing. And the reason why I'm using this one instead of this one is because the neckline is only on this piece. Okay, let's clear this space, workspace. And I'm gonna try to just use scrap fabric. Use scrap pattern paper. I think I should have enough space. No, I might not have enough room. I'm gonna do a new one. But I'll use this for the back, so I'm keeping this one. So for this, the facing on the front, we are going to actually fold our pattern because the facing is relatively small. So this is how it's gonna look like. It's gonna be the whole neckline. We're gonna fold our paper in half. And then, let's see the best way to do this. I'll do it backwards. Okay, so I have this. I'm tracing the seam allowance with it because this one will also have a seam allowance that is the exact same. Okay, and if you're like me, I always like to draw my stitch line. You don't have to, but you need to know that if you have a facing and you're tracing it over, you have to just remember the seam allowance. But I'm gonna do this for my sake. I'm gonna trace over my stitch line so that I know that this is the actual edge of the facing. So the facing is gonna be 2 inches in width. Measure out 2 inches, and luckily the ruler itself is 2 inches. So I'm just gonna do this all the way down. But we don't want a very pointy facing end. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna curve it in. We're gonna curve it down here. I'm gonna measure out 2 inches from the edge of this, the neck V point up here, 2 inches down. And then I'm gonna curve here. Where's my curve? And this becomes my new edge. Cross this off. This is gonna confuse us. So because this is on the bottom, on the inside, you'll notice I do not have a seam allowance. It's just raw edge. Generally, what we would do is finish it with the serger, the overlock, so that you don't have all these fraying. I didn't do that, but for this assignment, I don't think it's actually listed that you need to do that.
No.
Yeah, don't worry about the